Saturnastra, chapter 28. Martisor. Year 13, month 1, day 1, 15 p.m. Location: the continent of Artsy, region of Thracia, on the Dacia Plateau, a few miles from the provincial mansion codenamed Martisor, overlooking the city of Dokai. Or short for like a house very near this random city called Dokai. As was tradition with he used his instincts to choose a good place to settle down, and the Asura had given him the reins and allowed him to guide the group. Eventually, his group arrived to the region of Thracia, and this place was located in the southeast region of the continent, and it was known for its fertile land and naturally occurring hot springs and the twin rivers Iteru and Kiteru. The twin rivers were the longest rivers in the continent, and they were born from the Taurus mountain range. And they were both born a few miles from each other, and from the distance they looked identical, as they winded through the forest. However, Iteru winded northwards after descending the mountain, and Kiteru was intersected by the Dacia Plateau. And the river wandered all over the place, and bringing with it fresh life and greenery. And the Dacia Plateau was 1 mile high, and one could reach the top easily via the Mount Ymir, and this mountain was conveniently placed to allow easy access to the mountains via a gentle slope which ran parallel to the plateau. And during the day in summertime, part of the Kiteru passed through the mountain of Ymir, making the passage of the plateau impossible. And it took 2 months for his party to make it to this region, and the travel through the mountains went without incident. And the temporary dead river created a natural road, and they were up in less than a week. And the air was slightly thin, and it took a few weeks for Madonna to get used to it. And the oven maiden just did not take well to high elevations, and a rudimentary road in the tropical forest guided the party to more civilized area. And after 2 weeks' travel, they arrived in an open prairie, and this area was bustling with life, with caravans, shepherds, and travelers and merchants, and the group joined one of such caravans to make their way to Dokai. And Dokai was the wealthiest city in the region and the only city around that area. The residents were self-sufficient and quiet isolationists, but they ironically were open to whoever could make the trip. The residents were known as the Greys, and they were gray-colored humanoids, and their bodies were long and slender, with large rounded heads, and their height varied greatly between 5 feet and 2 feet, and their eyes were large, almond-shaped, and pitch black. And their mouth and nose were rather small, and the only body hair they had was in their head, and of all colors, and others were clean-shaven, and their faces did not make any expression, and they communicated with telepathy. This made them appear emotionless, with little regards to life, and they lived off water and sunlight, and so had succumbed to vampirism, a virus endemic to planet Earth, which caused a vampire to require blood to survive. And overall, humans think that the Greys are completely out of their mind. And the Greys were lifelong allies of our kind, and they conducted independent operations in Saturnastra, being fond of playing games. The Greys adapted quite well to the terms and conditions of being allowed residence in this world. Aside from the Greys, the Dokai was inhabited by the Saurians, and for many generations they had been genetically bred to pass for humans. They still laid eggs and were cold-blooded, and they also had lizard-like slit eyes, and their body also changed color depending on the temperature. And for this reason, visitors imagined that the Saurians could camouflage, and the males were 2 meters high and the females 1.4 meters. And the males typically had a stronger bill and had dragon wings, and they either kept their wings hidden or had their wings cut off at birth. And the female had slender, delicate figure and had amphibian tendencies. The Saurians were organized and followed a prescribed routines, and we have no idea how they got to this world. And one day there was one, and then the next day a million, and we have an unspoken allegiance, and we don't bother them, and they don't bother us. And our relationship was purely economic, and they were distant cousins of the Draconians, and the Draconians had kept their original lizard-like features, and we will not be seeing any Draconians since they tend to inhabit the equator. And they had a lower tolerance for cold temperatures. And the other residents who lived in the city were the people whom the Greys had cordially invited to live among them. And the others were children the Greys had adopted and raised on their own accord. And the Greys could not reproduce as often as they would like. And they were only fertile for 2 years of their ever-expanding lifespan. And on top of everything, their binary fusion only produced adult versions of themselves. So they adopted children to make up for the infant deficit. Since the Greys had arrived first, years, the city was modeled after a Qin city, and a large palace rose over the city, and the main facade was white, and the center buildings were red. And it had a small black windows in the higher floor, and the red section had darker red windows, and the roof had golden spirals, and this palace faced the north, and on the back it had a small forest and the largest lake of the plateau, and its crystalline surface only hinted at its saltwater surface. And there was also a golden spiral pagoda in the southwest and east of the city, and they were originally trying to make a feng shui city. And along the way they got bored and made a few Mayan ruins beside the pagoda, and when they got bored of the Mayan civilization, they built a perfect replica of Notre Dame in the center of the city. And all of the times they built other quixotic structures, and luckily the Sabians arrived and put an order in place before the great god took carried away with a crazy city planning. And with the Sabians put in order in the chaos, the Doka regained some sort of normalcy in the outskirts of the town. The city was divided between the Great Quarters and the Saurian Aquarium. The Saurians had a taste for Roman architecture, and other homes had the interior bathhouses, saunas, and pool, and they lived in the southern part of the city, and the Great lived in the northern section and in the palace. And they were the de facto rulers of the city because they arrived there first. And the northern section also had the residence of their adopted children, and the Great resident home was designed to meet the wants and needs of their little children. And scattered through this section were the homes of the Saturnastra who went to live with the Great. And tonight, at an ungodly hour, at his party arrived in the southern entrance of the guy, and his sibling had set up camp with some traveling merchants that they had been traveling with. Before entering the city, and he said to Eleanor, I am going to say hi to the king and sign some paperwork and boring stuff, and afterward I will face up our home in preparation for our homecoming and try to get some sleep. Eleanor was too sleepy to pay attention to anything that he said, and she lazily yawned and patted at his head, and she curled up herself into the bedsheets and lay down to rest. And when she was settled down, he left her tent in search of the Asura, and while walking, he passed by, and he saw a scene which made him pause. And Madonna was shivering near the fire, but she was not shaking because of the cold, and her usual disdainful face was twisted into a frown, and her eyes were open wide, and she had tea bags under her eyes from staying up so late. And the poor elf could not stop staring at a great child who was staring back at her, and both were sitting face to face near the campfire, and something about his expression and his face was deeply unnerving to her. And the great child wore long red robes akin to a Buddhist monk's, and near them said Loki roasting marshmallow. And Loki said to Madonna, just ignore him. He just be curious about what you are, and once he gets bored, he will leave you alone. The kid said, what is that? Well, kids regardless of whether or what planet they're from, they be a curious bunch. Shivering Madonna said, but he's creepy, make him go away. Don't say that you hurt her feelings, commented Loki, blowing a marshmallow that was being burned to a cinder. And Madonna pounded her lips and said, you said he was a she. And the great child blinked twice and rested his head on his frail hands. And then he turned his head and he waved and he smiled at the child and continued on his way. And the next group his path was composed of the Asura and Monkey King, and the Asura was packing her bag, and Monkey King was reading the hand of a maiden, and he gestured to the Asura to come. The Asura shrugged her shoulders and said, this vacation has lasted long enough, and I have to set sail tomorrow, and it was fun, this little journey of us, and we should do it again sometime, but with everyone, won't that be fun? And when she passed, she kissed he on the cheek, and then he said, I got a long journey ahead of me, take care of him. And he pouted when he saw that his sister wasn't coming with her. And the Asura went to stand before Monkey King, and while looking at her, Monkey King struck her head with his staff, and when he did, he teleported the Asura, and she left wrapping a faint blue smoke. And the maiden started coughing because of the smoke, and he continued his way through camp, and eventually he found the person that eventually he found the other person he was looking for. And Karina was in the midst of conversing with a Saurian, and both were looking through a contour when he entered the scene. And Karina smiled when she saw him, and the Saurian shoulder gave a slight bow to salute him, and the Saurian said, help break a little tie, child. Huh? Said he, giving the Saurian a sideways look. I say 4444 or 333. And Karina wants to keep it 4245 or 3435 or 5555 or 333. And other various, and I want it to be 12 or 16, and Karina wants to keep it at 15, complained the Saurian. And ignoring Karina then retorted, there was never 3 to begin with, and it was always 2.55 or many other variants and the like, and the acclimation was never truly perfect, and start complaining about the season's regulatory system. And start prioritizing the survival of humanoid life forms, not desire. There are plenty of other creatures here with the properties you so desire, but they are useless against our foe, revealed Karina, narrowing her eyes. Again with the abandons, how come you people are the only ones who remember them? As the sabio folding his arms, the matter's not up for debate, said Karina, picking up the contrast, and she rolled out the paper and tossed them into the fire. She then said to Ahi, let's take care of our business. And as she was going to stand, the Sabian placed his hand on her shoulder, forcing her to turn around, and in a hissing voice he said, we are not done talking. But we are good, man. Good day to you, sir, said Karina caustically, and she brushed her shoulder to get past the Sabian. And Karina took Ahi's hand, and together they walked to the entrance of the city. And the city was surrounded by a solid stone walls, and they were designed in traditional feudal walls, and the walls were more of a fashion statement than a genuine fortification. And very few people had the temerity to invade such a strange-looking city. And also the location of the car did not offer any strategic benefit. It was located a few kilometers from the far tip of the plateau, and beyond it there was a sharp decline to the bottom. And I was busy studying the decorations of the stone walls, and each block of stone had either a pretty picture carved into it or a decorated gibberish. And Karina said to one of the guards, open the gates, I have an audience with the great emperor. The guard said, is that so? He did not inform us of your coming. He probably forgot, said a different guard. And then he went to the gates and started knocking on the door, and with his shout the wood would groan. While he knocked, he yelled, let him. Relax, kid, you don't have to break the door now. Open the gates. The powerhouse wants to come inside, barked someone behind the door. And the door opened with a soft groan, and both siblings went within, and despite the late hour, people still wandered about the streets. And as Fabian Brigade marched past the ceiling, and a man with a lantern on a pole passed beside them, and he was checking to see if all the streetlights were still glowing. And when he noticed that the fire one had died, he would use the flame of his lantern to light it up again. And a great shout was knocking at the door of the shop, and he was dressed like a noble with a powder wig, and he carried a poodle in his arm. And then he went up to the shop, and he pressed his face against the glass, and the great shout waved over him, and then he continued knocking on the door. And he then said to him, I don't smell anyone home. Someone is in there, I know, said the great shout with a move of his lips. I can sense their stars within. That is probably just a lurker, commented he. Oh, is that so, said the great shout. A pity. The shout left the door, and he started walking in the direction of the palace. And he and Karina followed after him, and the Greys were the only beings capable of finding their way to the confusing part of their inner city. And needless to say, there were no main roads leading to the palace, and based on our observation, the shout was apparently his guide into the city. And when we asked the great shout, what's your name? We don't have official names, answered the shout without moving his lips. We know that, we answered, but for movie purposes, you guys are going to need names. Call me whatever you like when I'm on camera, answered the great shout. Can you just say, my name is so-and-so, and I was sent by the great prince or something, we complained. And Sophie glared at us and said, guys, you have made such an amazing progress. Don't ruin the field by interacting with the locals. I think smile was painted itself in the expressionless face of the great shout, and when he spoke this time, he generated sounds using his telepathy. My name is Joseph K. Lecter. I'm an accountant for the great prince. It is my job to collect taxes or whatever. You do not need to indulge, commented Karina, and she added in a more serious tone, and how long until we reach the palace? We're almost there, said Joseph, quickening his pace. And he said aloud, I've been going in circles for hours, and if you don't remember the way, let me walk ahead. And Joseph's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. He slowed his pace to allow Ahi to guide the group, and Karina said to Ahi, I thought this was your first time visiting the palace, and Ahi pointed to the sky and said, it seems like an interesting place from up there, and since I can't see it anymore, I decided to enjoy it from down here instead. And Joseph looked up to the moon, and he said, kind of creepy the other way around. I suppose this is how humans must have felt bad when we used to look down on them. Huh, said he, stopping to look at Joseph, and then he said, it is so pointless to overthink of the past. And Joseph could not help but overthink, since he was quiet for some time, and he almost did not seem to see where he was going. And eventually he found his way to the footsteps of the palace, and dark red flames burned over the golden plates leading up the stairs, and the interior had a beautiful red columns with leafy design. And the colors had curtains ominously swirling even though there was no wind inside. And a roll of grey suddenly passed by, and once inside he wandered about the corridors, and the palace had many interesting rooms to look at, though the interior resembled a Portola palace. The interior, one section of the palace interior had a Rococo design and another Baroque, and others had more esoteric designs. He eventually found the Great Prince with his court, and they were currently inside the dining hall. And the slouchy design of the dining hall was akin to the Great from yonder time, and true to their approved time periods, at the heart of the palace was but being the center building, the dining hall was 5-story hall, and the chair had soft oval-edged forms, and they were made of sleek plastic-like material, and the table was rectangular shape with smooth surfaces, and there was a white tablecloth with decorated gibberish around the edges, and the pattern too had no color. The silverware was more for traditional designs of knives and forks, and the plates were said to receive all sorts of food. However, there were no meals at the table. The only illumination came from a large orb, and since they were not allowed to use electricity, the inside had a provision of magical white flame, and its use shed a tremulous gray wire slide over the entire room, and this was covered by a see-through curtain that fell in from the roof, and this curtain boxed the entire table. And at the center was the orb, and the glass of this hall had a simplified design, and upon closer inspection we noticed the fine tracery, and the tiny high windows and the paintings. The paintings were the only source of color in the entire room, and there were 4 large paintings which showed more prominence, and each painting faced a cardinal point. And the southern painting over the entrance showed a maiden sitting on top of a golden throne decorated by a red griffin. The maiden was wearing a Greek lace. The southern painting had a nightly night cape, and the only source of light came from the round moon. The painting to the west showed an old man in red robes entering his home, and his hands were outstretched in indignation. The final painting showed a maiden resting her arm on a rock, and there was a white sheet to protect her arm from the stony surface, and a small snake was passing over her elbow, and she was resting on her wrist. And after our little group was downstairs, we walked all closer to the dining room, and the curtains covering it parted out to allow us to pass, and then at the end of the table there was the great throne, and the great prince was slender frame was wrapped in an elegant grey mantle, and only his face was visible. And his mantle was held in place by a golden crown, and the dress below it was whitish golden, and the edge of the rose and the veil had golden border embroidery, and before the prince there was a hookah, and a tin hand adorned with golden bracelets reached for the hookah, and with without disdain he drew in a breath, and he puffed out 5 golden rings. Alright, that's the end of that chapter.